Alan, and welcome to Veterans Update. Today we had my friend Pat Lafferty. Pat is the adjutant for the Michigan American Legion. Has done a remarkable job over his career, and today we're going to interview him as he retires and get a little reflection upon his service to the state of Michigan. Pat, thank you so very much for being here today, and we appreciate this.
Well, thank you, Jason. It's been a pleasure working with you all these years, and your time in the legislature and the House and the Senate, being a great leader and a great veterans advocate, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
And a veteran.
Absolutely.
That's a real bonus now, so thank you for having me.
I really appreciate this. And so you started, how long have you been with
I came on board, Jason, in 1983.
Wow.
And I came in as a Department Veteran Service Officer hired by the American Legion. I was assigned to Saginaw, VA, would be my home base. What a difference 32 years has made in the business. Do you realize in 1983, any veteran could walk through the doors at Saginaw VA Medical Center or anywhere in this country and say, I'm a veteran, I have an honorable discharge, and I'm seeking medical care, and I cannot defray the cost of the care on my own, and they were accepted for care.
Really? Wow.
That was the promise that the government made to our veterans, and it was the things that I thought about in the service. I said, well, when I get out, at least I'll have medical care, and I'll be able to buy a house.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I was confused on a home guaranteed loan, but I thought, they're so
that was all done by paperwork too.
All done paperwork, all done. You'd fill out a 1010, and you'd have a military discharge, and I was a service officer, and you'd get them into outpatient clinic at site. We didn't have clinics like we do now that you were a big part of, with the federal government opening clinics across the state. The first one being in Gaylord, back in 85
or 86. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it was everybody could be treated, and it was a great system. But it all changed in 85. Right. Along came what we call the means test. Congress decided that I remember one of our past national commanders was testifying in Washington, D.C. He said, I don't remember the government asking me how much money I made a year or how much money I had in the bank, my net worth. I picked up my hand and swore allegiance to the country to do my duty, and he said, for that, you're going to get medical care. And now, all of a sudden, it's all changing. Right. Now, in fairness to the Congress, they said, in consulting with a lot of people, it's no longer a draft. I was one of the last draftees that there was. I was drafted in 72.
Wow. So were you Army, Navy?
Army. I was Army, and I came in right at the tail of Vietnam. And I had a number. They had a lottery system, and all my buddies are saying, wow, I did all right. I'm 350. And they said to me, and I looked at mine, it was 42. And I said, so I said, well, I'm kind of going to have to go somewhere. So I was torn about whether I was going to go into college or going to go in the military. And I went down, they called me down for a physical, and they says, man, you might as well go because we're going to be calling you in a few weeks. So I decided on a spot to go, and I went regular Army. And I was like a draftee, but I was one of the last volunteers.
So where did you?
I ended up going to Fort Knox, and then from Fort Knox.
That's where I went to basic training too. Agony and misery.
Marched down the hill, and agony and misery and all that. We went through it, and I was in an honor company there. It was a great division. We came out of there, and I went to Fort Lee, Virginia. Okay. And I was in Fort Lee, Virginia, and then I got my orders for Vietnam. Went to California and got into California, and the peace talks were going on in Paris in 72 in the summer, and got ready to go. We were shipping out the next day, and all of a sudden they said, stand down. We're in Oakland Army Base, and they quarantined us there and said, we got problems. And 2 days later, they finally said, you're not going to Vietnam. It looks like we're not going to send any more troops, and it reached that point. And they didn't know where we were going to go, and they ended up saying, I guess you're going to Okinawa, Japan. Okay. So I headed to Okinawa, Japan for 18 months. Wow. And I was actually sitting in Okinawa when the troops, the prisoner of war, were released, and we were sitting there watching it on satellite as they got into the Philippines, and we're hugging people, and it was quite the emotion. The barracks was all there. We're all watching it. And we were supplying Vietnam and at that time. So I was lucky in that sense, but also I was kind of looking forward to going too, because we'd had a lot of local people in my area go to Vietnam. And kind of wanted to do my part, but I done what I was doing,
Sure.
ordered to go. And so I came back from Okinawa and left the military.
About 74 then?
74. Got out
Okay.
in 74 and couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do. I bounced around, did a lot of things, went to school, did
And
get
then
odd
you were
job.
in the local Legion post when
Yeah,
you came
yeah,
home?
belonged to Legion. Didn't really think about too much about it, and all of a sudden I heard there's going to be openings for a service officer, and I said, you know.
Did you grow up in the Saginaw area then?
No, I
or-
grew up in the Clare area,
Okay.
Clare, Farwell, up
Okay.
in that area
Yeah.
and stuff, and kind of a quick spin up to Traverse City up
Right, yeah.
115, so it was a great opportunity, and they hired me, and it was interesting. I didn't have any experience in service work, and I interviewed with American Legion in Lansing at their state headquarters, and I was told later by one of the past state commanders that was on the interview committee that he said, you left that interview and we said, this guy has no experience in service work. He doesn't have a lot of experience in service organizations. But he said, something told us to hire you. And he said, we said to ourselves, he's either going to be a great catch or he's the biggest BSer we ever seen in our life.
Well,
And
you've
years later, he seen me, he said, we figured out you're a big BSer, So it was, but it's great. The Legion has been fabulous, and coming to work and being able to experience helping people
Right.
and making a difference. And the American Legion allowed me to do that. They were the vehicle that allowed us to have service officers covering every VA medical center in the state. I covered 18 counties, Jason. I was all the way from Roscommon and West Branch and over to Oscoda, all the way back to Holton Lake, all the way down to St. John's, across to Chesaning, Saginaw, Bay City.
Remarkable.
It was a remarkable time. And
Well, in that time period, there was no cell phones.
nope.
And so you probably were looking for pay phones.
The girls in the office at state headquarters and public relations director Mark, they always tease me, I'm a sticky note guy. And I said, I got that from traveling around. I'd be at certain locations, but then I'd be pick up and I'd have office hours at another Legion post, another county building, or another VA medical center. You didn't have cell phones. We'd had nothing. I'd be alongside the road with a short cord and a phone,
Right.
with the rain hitting me in the face, with a bunch of sticky notes, checking on the status of a veteran's claim in Detroit, and then writing with what they were telling me. Okay, next I get another one and say I got to call this veteran back. It was remarkable. Then they came along with pagers. We can actually get paged in the field and then call back the number and stuff. And then bag phones came along.
Right.
You had the big old bag phones, and you watched all this. I was there through this whole transition, and along with the transition of the work was the transition of the veteran. And like I said, any veteran could walk in the hospital in
Sure.
83 and get medical care.
Well, and-
85, they said no, that
and
won't work anymore.
so you probably were working with some World War I survivors at that point in
World
time?
War I survivors, our big clients at that time were World War II, like Vietnam is
So
now.
now, right.
Yeah, they were that age.
Right.
My father, World War II vet, Navy, 6 years, both theaters. When I hired in, he was 62 years old.
Right.
So that was the World War II vet.
Correct.
The Vietnam vet was me.
Right.
It was the guy 30 years old. So it's like now it's the Persian Gulf vet that we're looking at. And it was remarkable, but it was such a transition time. We first went from you can receive care just by saying you cannot defray the cost. Here's my honorable discharge, you're in. To all of a sudden, you're not a priority because you don't have a service-related disability, you're not an XPOW, therefore you have to tell us how much money you make, how much network you had, and we'll put you in a category. American Legion, I was very proud, Jason. They fought that, and as we should for our 100,000 members in the state of Michigan. We took a stand that we weren't going to accept that. We lost the battle.
Sure.
We did lose the battle.
And that was that sort of restructuring, or just that they were running out of money, or was it because of all the World War II?
They expected a big surge as they do now. They
Sure.
expected that they couldn't keep up and they couldn't realistically keep the promise. And what the Congress said at the time was, we gave this promise when it was a draft. Now it's a volunteer force, and these people that are coming in now are coming in because they want to. This is a career for them. But there was a whole lot of Vietnam and World War II and Korea that were under the draft,
Sure.
but they were subject to the same
Right.
range scale.
Absolutely.
So, and they're
there you
going.
go.
And I had seen so many people, Jason, that come in, and rightfully so, older World War II vets, 62 years old at the time of 83, and say, I've never been here before, but I need help.
Yeah.
And then they'd went out and worked their whole life.
Sure.
They'd done good. Nobody had helped them. They did it on the hard work, the way they grew up, and they'd accumulated a little money. It's very tough to look at a veteran and say, geez, Mr. Smith, you did really well, but we have to check your income. Well, what's my income got to do with it? Well, you don't have a service-related disability. You're not an ex-POW, and you're not exposed to different conditions.
Right.
And that was a tough time. It was very tough to do that, to go through that, and you had to go through the finances with all of them and get them in.
And you probably had to do that all by hand.
Yeah, do it all by hand. You all the paperwork. I'd sat in Saginaw VA, and I wasn't a hero. All our service officers, whether it was the Legion, the VFW, the DAV, the AMVETS, the Purple Heart, we all did it. We were all this network, and we took care of each other. We took care of the vets, and I'd finish at Saginaw, say on a Tuesday night. I was always there on a Tuesday, and I'd sit there at nighttime and close the door at 5:30, and then sit there and try to do all my paperwork to get everything attached and stapled and all ready to go in an envelope to be dropped in and sent to the regional office in Detroit. It was just such a different world. And then you had PTSD.
Right.
They didn't even want to recognize it until 79.
Right. So that started because you probably had shell shock from World War II and
battle
then
fatigue
in Korea.
Yes. Yep.
And then because they had some.
But a lot of times they blamed them on personality disorders.
Oh.
And they weren't really paying what you referred to as PTSD. They were paying more of a mental condition. Very hard to get through. And then when 79, when the American Medical Society Association finally recognizes PTSD as a disability and being caused by conflict and trauma, then we had the Vietnam vets filing for that. And I tell you, Jason, it was tough. It was tough to get these things rated. You had to have a stressor that was, it was rigorous. You had to show direct threat to your life. You had to be in a firefight. You had to be somewhere where you felt you were outside the realm of human experience that you experienced personally. Thank goodness the PTSD ratings today, they're not quite as rigid, and we're able to win more of them claims. At the time, it was very difficult to win a PTSD claim, and we worked hard at them. They sent us to school. We had to study it, and we started winning those claims. And then Agent Orange came along. Then that was the big controversy, dioxin, you know.
Well, I was reading, has it been 50 or 60 times they've changed the ratings from Vietnam on different areas?
Oh, yeah. There's now at the time, they spent $100 million through the VA for studying Agent Orange, trying to show did it have adverse effects on veterans. What they came up with is nothing. They couldn't prove it, they said. So I'm going to plug the American Legion. This is a fact. The American Legion National headquarters in Indianapolis got with our VA and our people in Washington and said, we want a contract with Columbia University.
Oh, wow.
We want to see, in 1982, we want to see if we can somehow tie the exposure of a veteran, where was he stationed in Vietnam, where did they spray, and was there a connection, the correlation. We spent $100,000 doing that. And they went under a Freedom of Information Act, and they said, well, absolutely. We can show you where John Doe served and where they sprayed, and then we could show the difference between him and a veteran that was not in Vietnam, and that opened a whole door. It opened a whole door, and today there's over 15 disabilities that are presumptive conditions if you just step foot in Vietnam. You just have to be in country. You have to have one of, and unfortunately, many very, very deadly diseases from lung cancer, diabetes,
Hodgkin's.
all that. All that's part of it now. But we opened the door with the Freedom of Information Act and saying, let's see what Columbia University could do with American Legion, and it was an eye opener. I got to watch that. I got to watch this thing unfold. You know, as a service officer out in the field, trying to do the claim, trying to work the claim. And as the things come in, we say, wow, this is huge. Now we got this disability. So any veteran that walked in the door says, you Vietnam? Yeah. You got diabetes, type 2? Yes. Sit down. We're going to file a comp claim. Well, why? You got diabetes. Exposure to dioxin, has this been shown? unreal how many veterans didn't know that.
Sure.
We filed claim after claim. You know?
I did about 30 Veterans Town Hall meetings the
Yeah.
last 2 years with members of the legislature, and American
Right.
Legion has always supported.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing at about half those meetings,
Yep.
somebody shows up with either systemic heart disease or diabetes that
Yep.
didn't even know.
Didn't know.
Right.
Have no idea.
Right.
We do it every day. We
Right.
run into veterans every day that come in and say, well, I just want to, I haven't been doing service work myself, Jason, since 92.
Okay.
92, I served as a service officer
Okay, so
from 83 to 92.
Okay.
Then I took the position of assistant director for the American Legion VA&R program in the field.
Okay, so VA&R for our listeners. then.
Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation for the American Legion on a state level. And they appointed me as assistant director, so they wanted me to leave Saginaw and go to our headquarters in Lansing. So I went to the headquarters in Lansing, and that's when I got met
Right.
people like yourself
Sure.
that were veterans advocates in the legislature, and we were able to work together for a lot of state benefits and a lot of things that go that transfer into the federal benefits. So I spent 6 years as assistant director for VA&R, and then 1998 I took the step to I was humbled by appointment to the state adjutant, which
Wow.
is the chief administrative officer for the American Legion, oversees all our programs, children, youth, veterans affairs, national security, Americanism, all of that. Now we have a great staff
Sure.
in our headquarters.
How many staff do you have with you?
Well, in Lansing, we got 7 of us,
Okay.
and then in Detroit, we have 21 people
Okay.
that are under the Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation.
And-
They work the regional office,
Sure.
and then some of them are out in the field covering the medical centers and the whole
Wow.
state of Michigan, all the way from the Wisconsin line
Right,
all the way
right.
to Detroit River.
Right.
We have service officers that assist veterans. But we're a family, a network. We're the paid employees, but the volunteers of all the posts of over 400 American Legion posts.
400,
Yeah,
wow.
437, I believe, and every one of them has a post-service officer that helps locally to help veterans. File for their claims, or to at least steer them to the right direction, to a county service officer, to a department service officer, to the agency, the
Right.
new Veterans Agency. We're all working together as one. And so that's a great network to have. And they not only the local posts, they do children and youth. They have baseball. They have oratorical for about the
Well, I
Constitution.
was a Boy Stater.
Yeah,
which,
you're a
know,
Boy
yeah,
Stater,
right.
one of the biggest things that exposed the young men to the government,
Right.
and I think probably influenced you
Sure,
in your
absolutely,
career.
absolutely.
When the first time I met you,
Yeah.
you told me I'm a Boy Stater.
Right.
And Dale Kildee,
Right, yeah, there's another, yeah.
retired
Yeah,
congressman.
yeah.
Every time I seen
Yeah.
him in Michigan or in Washington D.C., he'd say, "Pat, I'm a Boy Stater," And it's a great training program to show that politics and government is a great career.
So with over 400 posts, there's real characters out there, because much like I was on the circuit.
Yep.
I always enjoyed going to those different events that they would have, whether it be a fish fry, whether it be the chicken dinners, whether it be the fundraisers.
Right.
You've got to have some great stories from there.
You do. You got some great people out there. Like
Absolutely.
you said, they're so energetic. They're so devoted.
I mean, the whitefish in the UP at some of those
yeah.
posts is just to die for.
Oh, yeah,
I
you
mean,
just-
better than going to some of the best restaurants. in the-
you pick out your best fish, Red Lobster. Or
Right.
something. Well, go to Engadine on
Right,
Friday night
right, yeah.
in the UP,
Right,
and they
absolutely.
will rival and at a
Absolutely.
lower cost.
Absolutely,
Too,
yeah, they-
and great people,
yeah.
Jason. I just can't say enough after
Yeah.
32 years of working for this organization. And I say this about my sister organizations too, all the rest.
Sure.
They're great, devoted people. They got jobs.
Right.
They got families. They got everything that you and I have, and they still take time for veterans.
Right.
They still take time to take chairmanships for Boy State
Right.
in a local post,
Right.
or an oratorical,
Right.
or a baseball team. All the different things we do for youth, or they take something in Veterans Affairs where they can help their fellow veterans. And it's a network, and you have them at the post level, then you move up to a district level, and you have these devoted people at the district level, and then you move up in the department level. I've worked for, I've been under 5 presidents during my career,
Really?
and 4 governors, and John
Wow.
Engler stayed 12 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
So
5. Wow.
yeah, so
So-
I came under Blanchard,
Sure, right.
and then it was Engler,
Leonard.
and then it was
Granholm.
Granholm, and now Snyder.
Right.
And then when you go back to Reagan,
Yeah.
and Bush,
Bush and-
and Clinton,
Right.
and Bush, and now Obama.
Wow.
So 5 presidents and 4 governor administrations. So the change is
Sure.
just there, and trying to the issues get bigger. And another thing that came along during my term was the Court of Veterans Appeals.
Right.
Before you could file a claim, that was my job to file a claim in the field and get it downtown, and our people would take it over downtown at the regional office and develop it. But say we run into problems and they didn't award it, or they didn't award partial, you could appeal it. You appealed it to the Board of Veterans Appeals in Washington, D.C. And it's just funny, about 13% every year those claims were approved, the appeals. But in 1989, a Court of Veterans Appeals came along where you could go beyond the Board of Veterans Appeals and actually go to a court set up for veterans. And you could go that one step. Well, that court made a lot of decisions over the board, and with the changing things in PTSD and Agent Orange exposure and all that. And I'm not picking on the Board of Veterans Appeals, but the court made a lot of decisions based on changes in, you know, what the medical field is saying about disabilities. And so a lot of them claims were remanded back to the board, and that remand means sent back for further development or possibly overturned, then sent back to the regional office. And that's one of the problems we have now. It's a good thing we got, where we're able to have more of a safety net for veterans' claims. But same time, it's backing up the system.
Absolutely.
It's back. You're a victim. It's a 21 here, you know. So you know, you got all these claims pouring in, and the regional rates them. But if it's appealed, it can go a couple layers, and then they can send back, and all that stuff's coming back to regional for further development or actually overturned. But this backs up the system, and more people are applying for benefits. Thank goodness.
Right. Well, in your efforts in helping us get to fully developed claims.
Right.
I mean, when we started out as a team, when I was on the chairman, we were like 3 or 4%. Now we're at over 40.
Yes.
So that helps some of this. But then you've got these complex claims. And, and I forget, I don't know if you were on, we were with General Vadnais, and I've never seen some of these examples of paperwork until you actually physically visit the McNamara building, when there was one was about half of a room, a small closet, that was just one individual's claim because of the amount of time that they'd served.
Absolutely.
And so there are these very complex cases that sometimes require, you know, strict examination and full review. And it's hard to explain to citizens.
The first time I went down there in '83, Jason, I was amazed. Like, you walk in the 11th and 12th floor of the McNamara building in regional office, where the Legion offices are, and all the other service organizations working with the Veterans Administration. Couldn't believe it. Walk into adjudicators. They're the people that have to take all the laws and the evidence and make a decision. They're called adjudicators. And we'd walk in there and you couldn't hardly see the person because of files. Files everywhere, paper, huge files. And I know they're trying to go paperless, but there's, you know, that's a tough thing to go. There's still a lot of paper in Detroit Regional Office. And to see that and to understand how complex this is, and the waiting times. When I started in the business, probably had a waiting time of filing a veteran come in and say I was injured in Vietnam, and I file a claim for injuries and residuals and everything, and you do a compensation called a 526. You'd do that and get it all packaged up and get it down to Detroit, and they would schedule them for examination. They'd go through the records. You'd probably be looking at a decision in 4 months.
Correct.
And now you can look at decisions now with all the how far we've come with computers and everything, but it still gets down to the claim work and the workload that's coming in because of people like yourself that have got the information out that you were eligible to file for these things. We're filing more claims than ever. But then you got the backlog coming back from D.C. on remands, and all this is causing a big problem in backlog. You're probably at the best in this world now, filing a comp claim, you're probably looking at 8 to 12 months, you know. And then if you run into a couple hiccups, you're looking at 2 years. And you brought up a fully developed claim, just so everybody knows. That means that the service officer has compiled everything needed by the VA to make a decision. You have John Doe's medical record from his private doctor. You have his military records all in there. You have his birth certificates of his children, his marriage license. You have every single thing, a fully developed claim that goes into the field from a county office, from one of the agency's service officers, or one of our department service officers for organization. going in there and that the VA can take that claim and rate it. And with those kind of claims, you can get them done in a couple months.
Right.
So it's so important that we develop these claims, because if you don't give this veteran, say, give me everything we got, you're going to run into this 2 and 3 year problem.
Correct.
So I'm going to compliment you for bringing that forward.
Right.
You brought that forward when you were on the
committee, and it's been amazing.
And since you've been assistant director for the agency, fully developed claims, we went from, help me,
Well, it's like 4 to 5% to now we're at about 47%.
Yeah.
Which has then stopped the backlog, giving more.
Exactly.
Pat, I hate to say this, it's amazing how quickly this hour or half hour's gone.
Yep.
We've got a couple minutes. What do you feel are your biggest accomplishments in your tenure here?
My personal compliments, I don't think I had any personal compliments. I'm part of a team.
Accomplishments,
Of a team.
Yeah.
I think that we've improved our training of our people. We have steadfast stood up for the veterans in Congress and with the legislature, worked in harmony with the VA. And I want to say just real quick about Phoenix and some of the problems had. Believe me, Jason, I worked with people in the VA. 99.5% of those people are fabulous advocates. They have a different job than a service officer or a service organization, but they're great people, and I'm hoping that maybe that tragedy is going to lead to better things, you know. But I want to say that I've worked with some great people in the county level, the federal level, the state level, and I think accomplishments, being there to make a difference, allowing the American Legion that we change people's lives.
Sure.
That Jason Allen walks in and you're a veteran, and say you weren't who you are, and you're having a rough time, and you tell me about your service, and I said, wait a minute, Jason, let's file a claim on this. And I file a claim, and you walk into me 6 months later and say, Mr. Lafferty, thank you so much for you changed my life. You changed my family's life, because we have income, we have stability. And American Legion allowed me to do that, and I thank the American Legion and all the volunteers across the state that are associated with American Legion. Fabulous organization, honored to be there, honored to work with people like you for all these years, and I'll never forget the advocacy that you show in all the years that we've known each other. So,
Pat, thank you very much for your service.
I appreciate the opportunity.
I know that this is closing of one window. I know we'll see you around in a couple different capacities.
Yeah, well, I wish you the best too, Jason. And I know you're going to be a factor around Lansing and Washington for a long time.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
This concludes another edition. Please find more information listed below.